Hello everyone, welcome to the module 1 of the AI and Data for Effective Research and Communication in Environment Science and Development course. I'm Rohini Krishnamurthy and I previously worked as a correspondent for Down to Earth. In module 1 of the course, I'll be talking about what is AI, how it has evolved over the years, how AI can play a critical role in addressing complex global issues such as climate change, public health, sustainable development, as well as the risks associated with the technology. We will also delve into the ethical, legal, and societal dimensions of using AI in public communication. So let's begin. So, what is AI? So, broadly speaking, AI is a technology that provides machines the ability to engage in cognitive abilities or cognitive activities such as reasoning, learning, and problem solving in a way which is very similar to how to the human brain, and but at a much faster rate and without fatigue. But technically speaking, AI systems are or AI technologies are products or services that are adaptable and autonomous. Now, what I mean by adaptable is basically AI systems which are, after being trained, they can develop the ability to perform new ways of finding patterns and connections in data the patterns that are not visible to humans. The autonomy of AI refers to some AI systems that can make decisions without, the ongoing control of humans, without humans having to spoon feed everything. So another term that we need to be familiar before we go ahead is machine learning. And machine learning is a type of artificial intelligence that allows a system to learn and improve from examples without all its instructions being explicitly programmed. So it can basically, you first train it and then it tries and that's how it learns how to basically identify patterns in the data sets. And once the training is done, you introduce it to the world and then you give it new new text, new data, and you can identify patterns, and it can give out some it can basically solve a problem or it can produce an output. So that's machine learning. And you can also use it to generate text because it's trained, and then you basically introduce it to the world like ChatGPT, and then you can generate text with it. So not all AI systems are equal based on their capabilities. They are broadly defined or classified as artificial narrow AI and general AI. Now, artificial narrow AI, or it's also called as weak AI, it's the type of AI that exists today, that we all use. It can be trained to perform a single or a narrow task, which is of course faster and better than humans. But like for example, you can ask AI to do a literature survey on a particular topic. So that's narrow AI for you. But apart from this defined task that you give it, the command, it cannot do anything outside of it. So it only targets a single subset of cognitive abilities and advances in that spectrum. So Siri, Amazon's Alexa are all examples of narrow AI. Even OpenAI's ChatGPT, which is also considered a form of narrow AI because it's limited to a single task of text-based chat. Now moving on to general AI. I mean, this is something that many of us would be familiar with. It's the artificial general intelligence, which is also touted as the next big thing in the AI field. So this is more of a theoretical concept now. It can basically use previous learnings and skills to accomplish new tasks in a different context without the need for human beings to train them. So this allows AGI to learn and perform any sort of intellectual task that a human being can. We will talk more about it as we go ahead. Now, AI has, AI's popularity has exploded, and it's among everyday users, and it's phenomenal so far. AI is embedded in our search engines. That AI overview, and especially when you use Google, you get an AI overview on top. Then you have emails, so AI can actually craft emails for you. It can modify emails. It can make it sound more formal. It's also being used in legal databases, clinical decision support systems, and many products and services that have AI embedded in them. Now, even if you can, just looking back a few months ago, There was a new, another thing that we see is any sort of new AI tool that is introduced, they just get instantly like really popular. So, for example, if you see OpenAI's 4O image generation tool, OpenAI launched it on March 25th, 2025, and within 1 hour, that some 1 million users had subscribed to it. So people were basically uploading their images and getting the AI to convert their images into paintings that look like artwork of Ghibli Studio. So the question is, how did we reach there? 5 years ago, if we see, the leading AI models could not even coherently write a proper paragraph. Sorry, it couldn't write a coherent paragraph in response to a command. But then in 2022, OpenAI launched ChatGPT, and it basically made generative AI a household name. So basically, it could create new content in response to a prompt and reuse its learnings to solve new problems. So basically, what is generative AI? It's an AI model that it's an AI model that can generate text, images, audio, or video in response to user prompts. It uses machine learning techniques to create new data that has similar characteristics to the data it was trained on. So ChatGPT is an example of it. So artificial intelligence has had a slow beginning. It picked up pace in the 2010s, and then in 2022 it exploded after ChatGPT. So think of it, AI was sort of coined in 1955. It was coined by a computer scientist named John McCarthy to describe the science and engineering of making intelligent machines. And in 1961, we had the first industrial robot called Unimate. It actually, General Motors had used it, and they replaced humans with the industrial robot in the assembly line. And in 1964, there was a pioneering chatbot which was widely considered the first generative AI. So this was in the 1964. It was developed by a researcher by an American researcher, and it could hold conversations with humans. And then what happened was, we entered a phase called AI winter. So we had many false starts and dead ends. So nothing really was happening significantly. And then in 1997, there was some sort of revival. So you had Deep Blue. It was a chess playing computer from IBM, and it defeated the world chess champion Garry Kasparov. In 2012, we had a chatbot named Eugene, which passes the Turing test. And a third of judges basically believed that Eugene was human. So what is Turing test? It was actually developed by a computer scientist named Alan Turing. He proposed a test for machine intelligence. So if a machine can trick a human into believing that it is a human, then it has passed the Turing test. So that's about that. And then since then we have had Alexa and all of that. Then you had ChatGPT in 2022, and you had the AI boom. The reason ChatGPT did so well is because it had better comprehension and it minimizes the biases. And then we had like several like similar tools like Microsoft's Copilot, Meta's Llama, Google's Gemini, to name a few. The possibility with generative AI, they are endless. In response to a command given in simple language, it can write stories, music, hold a conversation in most languages on any topic, develop apps and computer programs, fact check news articles, or browse internet to provide in-depth analysis on any issue. So this is where we are, and now the question is, what is the next big thing? So we are heading towards AI agents and artificial general intelligence. So I've mentioned two things. Artificial intelligence that I had mentioned previously. So AI agents are systems that can carry out multiple tasks with minimal human intervention. So they can reduce workforce and increase productivity by acting as a virtual coworker. So for instance, a human engineer could describe a new software sort of a feature to an AI agent, and which would then code, test, iterate, and then deploy the tool, all of this. So companies like Butterfly Effect, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Apple, Meta, OpenAI have all been developing it or have already developed AI agents. So that's AI agents for you. And then the other is AGI. As I mentioned previously, it's a theoretical concept. It basically refers to a potential future AI. So AGI basically sort of equals human intelligence or even exceeds human intelligence. So it is not dependent on training, as I mentioned, and it can develop an understanding and adapt to a developing situation. For example, if you have a self-driving car that's powered by an artificial general intelligence model, it can, while encountering traffic congestion, it could, decide on an alternative route instead of, following a pre-programmed route. It would communicate with other connected vehicles and, change its path considering distance and travel time. This is just an example of what AGI could do. And again, it's just a theoretical concept. Now, moving on to the second important part of the module, which is how AI could help, address global challenges. Um, like I had said, AI can analyze data and spot patterns, and it's this very ability can sort of help AI in making significant strides in healthcare, environment conservation, poverty elevation, sustainable development, and also disaster response. So, in scientific research, AI is already removing barriers. By for example, if you look at drug discovery, which could take decades, it could reduce the time to develop a drug and it could identify the best drug candidates for a particular disease, and it could also save time. Then in climate science, AI models are already helping enhance or starting to enhance weather prediction, as well as advancing whole earth models for water management, greenhouse gas monitoring, methane, for example, predicting the impacts of disasters. They are also being used to predict the structure of proteins, which would actually, maybe help identify or help identify a particular good drug or a good drug candidate for a particular disease. AI could also support advancements in sustainable development goals by providing diagnostics and predictive analytics in healthcare, which is SDG 3, crop monitoring, and climate resilience in agriculture, SDGs 2 and 5, and personalized learning and education, SDG 4, all of that. And like I had said, it can detect patterns and all of that. So it can also AI is can also monitor the environment. It can help governments, businesses make more planet-friendly choices. It can also make us more efficient. It can also detect, like I said, oil and gas installations whenever they vent methane, which is a very potent greenhouse gas. Um, so basically, it has sort of applications and the triple planetary crisis of climate change, nature and biodiversity loss, as well as pollution and waste. Um, and also, it's also being used in sort of mapping the destructive sand dredging. So that's another potential applications, or that's one of the applications. Uh, Moving on to the risks. So far, AI sort of benefits are like concentrated in certain countries or in the hands of powerful companies. So what the fear is that without adequate guardrails, AI could increase inequalities and digital divides, and it could affect the most vulnerable. So we already see that AI is shaking up the labor market, and the IMF predicts that AI will affect almost 40% of jobs around the world, replacing some and complementing others. So there are two ways this could happen. One is humans could increasingly collaborate with AI, with machines, augmenting their capabilities, saving their time, improving the speed and quality of work. Tasks that which can be easily automated, like proofreading documents, scheduling meetings, and suggesting replies to emails. This can be taken care by AI, so you are free to do other important tasks. Uh, and second, the technology can also create new sort of jobs, like sort in AI in research and development, as well as in deployment and maintenance of these models. Um, but the thing is that AI could affect income, and it could lead to wealth inequality within countries. Now we see that those who are who are quite familiar with AI, who are in touch with the changes or who are familiar with AI, they could see an increase in their productivity and their wages, and those who aren't will be left behind. So that's a big issue. And when we talk about the environment, AI's the adoption of AI that we are seeing has also increased the number of data centers. And data centers are basically this infrastructure support for it houses servers and all of that, and that's very important for AI to function. So what happens is, there are issues with electronic waste because the servers, that they generate, like once it's done, you have the electronic waste. They're large consumers of water, which is also becoming scarce in many places. And they also, like these chips, the microprocessor chips and that are used in the servers, they rely on critical minerals and rare materials, and they're often mined unsustainably. And also data centers use massive amount of electricity. So I'll go into the specifics. So a 2 kg computer requires 800 kilograms of raw materials, and the microchips, the microprocessors that I mentioned, they need rare earth materials. Data centers produce electronic waste, which contains hazardous substances like mercury and lead. Data centers use water, like for example, AI related infrastructure could consume. So why, before I move into that, why they consume water is because they produce the servers when they are working. They produce a lot of heat, and that heat is not good for the servers. They could fail. So what I mean, imagine that, for example, if you have ATM machine, any if data centers basically also has storage capabilities as well. So if that fails, then your banking and all of that will get affected. So anyway, so what they generate a lot of heat, and to cool them down, you need water. According to an estimate, AI related infrastructure may consume, like 6 times more water than the country of Denmark, which is a country of 6 billion people. This is a problem when, like, a quarter of global population, they do not have access to clean water and sanitation. And finally, for the data centers to work, they're big energy guzzlers. They need a lot of energy, and most of it comes from fossil fuels, which again release greenhouse gases. A request, like for example, if you use ChatGPT, it consumes 10 times more electricity than, say, a normal Google search. So that's according to the international energy agencies. Then there are other issues. One of them is biases. Recently in 2025, there was a study published in the journal Nature Science, which basically showcased the biases that could come out of using AI models in healthcare. So what they found is, whenever these generative AI models, when they had to look at a patient's history, and that it would basically suggest different tests or medications based on the socioeconomic background. So if a person is well off, then the AI model would recommend more follow-up tests and all of that, and not so much. And maybe if somebody from a lower income group would just be like, take a normal, like a paracetamol or something like that. I'm just giving an example. So these biases, this happens because AI is trained on data that is already biased. So if the data is biased, it could just perpetuate that cycle. It could communicate stereotypes or discriminatory behaviors. Then the other issue is hallucination. So this is something we all need to keep in mind if we are using AI in communication, or using AI to do some literature survey for you. So AI systems can generate false texts, which, I'm just giving an example. It could say that the US has had 3 female presidents when it's had none. So, or it could just make up a citation for a particular, give you a wrong source. The system, this happens because the system is trained to generate plausible sounding language. It is not required to check whether something is true or not. And it can also show, AI can also show deception, traits of deception and manipulation. So there was another study which basically analyzed Cicero. It was an AI system developed by Meta Platforms, and so it was actually trained to excel in the board game called Diplomacy, and the tool actually learned to exploit loopholes. Even though it was trained not to deceive humans, it learned to exploit loopholes in the game and deceive users. So that was one big concern. Other AI related concerns include, copyright infringement, factual errors, misinformation, fake information, like you can think of deep fakes, transparency, privacy issues, and all of that. So basically, these sort of ethical issues can result in undermining trust between organizations that use AI and audiences. So this brings us to the third part of the module, which is the ethical and social implications of using AI in public communication. So we know AI has benefits. AI provides benefits, especially in communication. It could improve content creation, it could enhance audience engagement, but trust issues remains a major barrier. So we know that AI poses complicated threats, and that's why we need effective regulations. And So governance of generative AI requires policymakers to basically walk the line between enabling AI benefits while also addressing the risks. The developing world is still far behind. According to an April report by the UN Trade and Development, around a third of developing nations, only a third of developing nations have AI strategies. Among richer nations, US has no legal framework. In January 2025, President Donald Trump revoked an AI-related executive order by his predecessor, under which federal agencies had begun to develop guardrails to protect privacy and civil liberties. Japan has non-binding guidelines applicable to AI development and use, and promotes voluntary efforts by AI stakeholders for safety, fairness, and transparency. UK in 2021 introduced a 10-year plan to become a global AI superpower, and in January 2025 it launched an AI Opportunities Action Plan, but is considering a bill for an AI regulatory body. China sits on the other end of the spectrum. It has enacted a slew of laws for labeling AI generated imagery and protection of privacy and intellectual property. What is happening, largely in the world is that, regulation and innovation are pitted against each other. They're frequently perceived as opposing forces in the discourse of regulatory frameworks. However, in China, it's a different scenario there. EU in 2024, EU's AI Act, European Union's AI Act, was enacted in 2024, and the first set of rules were implemented in 2025. And that act prohibits, harmful AI-based manipulation and deception, and also exploitation of vulnerabilities. We need to be watching this space more closely to figure out the impacts of these regulations. Coming to what India is doing. So far, it seems like India's policy is more geared towards the market. They have ranged from, providing public infrastructure to enable market-led AI production, to nationalizing data sets to enable big data analysis. Basically, there was a paper that argued in a 2024 paper in Communications Research and Practice. So that study basically said that the government views itself as a facilitator or enabler for private enterprise, and that regulation can disincentivize innovation. Earlier this month, the Ministry of the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, they unveiled the India AI governance guidelines. It's a comprehensive framework to ensure safe, inclusive, and responsible AI adoption across sectors. One of the important things that the guidelines talk about is content authentication, and it says that the popular way of doing it is actually, using watermarks. And such labels and other unique identifiers, it says, can be used to authenticate whether or not any piece of information was generated or modified by AI systems. Like, for example, the EU's AI Act requires watermarking of AI generated content. China also requires labeling. Um, it also talks about deepfakes, and it recognizes it as a growing menace to society. So, deepfakes is an AI tool that can create realistic but fake videos, audios, and images. So, and it could be used to create, disinformation, misinformation, fake news, and all of that. So, last year, television media personality Rajat Sharma was targeted thrice by deepfake videos, and he filed a petition before the Delhi High Court requesting the union government to introduce stricter regulations. So anyway, this report, recent report by the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, recommended to set up a committee of experts with representatives from government, industry, academia, and standard setting bodies to develop global standards around content authentication and provenance. These standards, governance frameworks, and technical measures may be presented in standard setting bodies and could be subjected to rigorous testing. It also talks about copyright issues. Now, there's been a lot of debate around copyright issues, whether copyright material could be used to train AI models. Across the world, there've been issues. Like in February 2025, some 14 publishers, including The Atlantic, The Guardian, and Forbes, they sued a Canada-based company, AI developer, and the lawsuit basically says that this company had used the copyrighted work to train its generative models and display news articles without attributing it to them. And they also alleged that that the model provided false or hallucinated information and attributing that information to them. So this is a debate happening across the world. So in India, basically the Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade, they established a committee in April 2025 to deliberate on this issue. So it includes it will examine the legality of using copyrighted work in AI training and implications, and evaluating whether that work generated, the copyrightability of works produced by generative AI systems. According to the Indian law, Section 52 of the Indian Copyright Act, limited fair dealing exceptions apply for private or personal use, including research. But these exemptions or exceptions are restricted to non-commercial use and do not extend to organizational or institutional research. So this means that modern AI training cannot use modern AI training cannot use copyrighted material. But based on current practice, various lawsuits have been filed claiming, like I had mentioned, 14 publishers. That was one example. So basically, the report, the Indian by the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, talks about basically certain practices globally where text and data mining is allowed to enable AI development. Like for example, EU, Japan, Singapore, and the UK have adopted this approach. So the committee basically set up by the Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade basically may consider this sort of balanced approach, which enables text and data mining so that there's innovation happening, and also enabling provisions to protect the rights of copyright holders. So we'll have to see how this pans out. But anyway, while using AI in communication, we need to keep certain things in mind, certain things that we should not engage in, like for example, spreading of misinformation or hallucinated content. Always fact check everything that is produced by AI. Producing biased outputs that perpetuate discrimination, causing inadvertent plagiarism or copyright violations, exposing confidential or proprietary data, and not disclosing that some text or some video was actually created by AI. So we need transparency, and we need to develop trust. So if anything is generated by AI, that needs to be disclosed. You have to indicate when AI tools have either you've used AI to create something or to enhance it. So this brings us to the end of the course. I hope this was useful, and thank you for your time.